everybody, my name is Akamori, and I just wanted to create this video because essentially I've had some people ask me in the past um, how I should get my start as a designer. What should I be doing to create my business? What should I be doing to get customers? How do you get customers? How are you networking? Where do I start? Where do I go from here? And a lot of the times, these artists don't have any like track record, right? Like they're just starting out. There's nothing there. So one of the things I wanted to do was make this video, even though I had several other videos planned, such as like, tips and tricks for Photoshop and all that other stuff. The reason I did this video instead, it was partly inspired actually by some Devin Nash content, which you should go check out if you're looking to learn a little less about more of design content and Photoshop and maybe more about the analytical side, the SEO, the marketing, the numbers. Then I would definitely go recommend checking Devin Nash, and I'll make sure that I link his information in the description. But um, I personally wanted to do my own sort of flair on this, more so on the designer field, because essentially as an editor, as a designer, or an illustrator, a lot of the times we're on the back end of people's content, right? We're the ones that are more on the creative side of things, where we're bringing these ideas and these ideas to life that someone else has, and so we're kind of the inspiration that kind of follows up from their initial thought process. So basically, the video in summary is going to be advice I've learned so far as a designer. Okay, and I have a few bullet points that I want to talk about, which will probably end up diving into several other points and just kind of discussions as a whole. Um, so let me know if this is a video type that you would want to hear from in the future at the end of it, after everything's all said and done, or if you are looking for more just straight up tutorial type content where I show you how to do certain things in Photoshop or After Effects or whatever else. But yep, let's get into it. There's no point delaying the inevitable. We've had a long enough intro as it is. So, the very first thing I can honestly say is know your product. Okay? When being asked, how do I do this, or how do I network, or how do I get started, or who should I be working for, or how do I grow my accounts? How do I get work as a designer? The first thing you have to do is know your product. And what I mean by know your product is, it's a little bit more elaborate than just like, oh, well, I design stuff. Okay, well, what do you design? What's your what's your focus? Like, what is the content that you personally yourself want to be creating? What do you want to make? Um, and you don't have to stick to one thing, but you do need to know exactly what you want to be doing. And I think as an artist, that idea is going to change all the time as you grow into your art and as you grow through your experiences and as the commissions roll in and as the different types of commissions roll in, your ideas could change on that and the direction could change in terms of where you want to be and what content you want to be doing. So you could literally start, well, I just want to make YouTube thumbnails. That's what I want to do. I want to work for a YouTuber or whatever, or just various YouTubers, and I just want to make thumbnails. Well, making thumbnails and doing all of that is definitely a skill set in its own, but you are doing, it is still graphic design. You are still working with Photoshop. There's still techniques to that. There's still rules you kind of follow. There's kind of general guidelines and practices that you have to follow to kind of do something like that. And that is a good step. So that would be like, your market, you have kind of a goal in mind of to what you want to do and the content you want to create and the kind of work you want to be doing. That doesn't mean it can't change though. You could be doing that for a year and down the line, all of a sudden, well, I want to take the skills that I've learned and I want to apply them to more general things. So I want to start doing headers, for people's social media's account, or I want to start getting into maybe like web design, so you are not limited to that one goal, but it is more so a guideline to get you started because one of the things I can honestly say is if you don't already have a skill, is a lot of people get caught up in like, well, what should I learn? What type of content should I be creating? What programs should I be learning? And I think a lot of that is just kind of background noise. And it's usually kind of stemmed into people's indecisiveness, or maybe they're anxious about taking a risk or taking a chance or having to learn a new skill, and the uncertainty of, well, maybe I'll fail if I don't get any work or whatever. But a lot of that stuff is just simply background noise. It doesn't quite matter what programs you learn or whatever, but just simply picking a direction and moving forward is huge. So I'm going to take a page and I'm just going to write that down. So the very first thing, know your market, because this is insanely important. So know your market is step one, and that would be knowing, just to kind of recap, knowing what content you want to create. If you don't, like I said, if you don't already have that information in mind, then otherwise pick a subset of tools and programs that you want to learn. Because again, it doesn't really matter whether or not you've already got some experience, or whether or not you're starting from scratch and you have absolutely no idea where to go. Just simply pick something, latch onto it, and start learning, because that's the biggest thing. Okay. So the other thing I would want to probably say would be, the second one is definitely going to be know your market. So I have some notes on the side. So I've already got some of this kind of written down, so that way I'm not just like rambling off the top of my head. And this one is just as equally as important. So you can have all your content that you want to do. You have an idea in mind, or you're learning a certain skill. You're learning tools that you wanna take and start growing from there. The biggest thing, obviously, you're gonna ask is it's like, okay, well, not to worry. Like I've learned how to use Photoshop, or I already knew how to do that, and I've been practicing, working on this thumbnail, or I've been working on, banners or overlays for a streamer or something. I've been practicing these skills. The next big factor here is know your market. There's um, content creation and like the business as a whole is very vague. Like anybody can say, well, I'm gonna make banners, or I'm gonna make logos, or I'm gonna do this. But there's subsets to, like, essentially, like, there's little branches that branch off of like literally every little category, right? Or every niche. So if you were to look at like streamers, or YouTubers as a whole, like there's a lot more to it than just that, in my opinion. Um, I would say, if you're at least starting out anyways, I would say pick a specific niche, find a little market that you can specifically kind of invest your time into. Um, so that's what I'm gonna put down as the first part is pick a niche. Pick a niche, or an area of high interest for you and the general market. Because, and what I mean by that is, not, when I say like an area of high interest for you and the general market, this it's almost like two different things. So they are obviously, the area of high interest for you is, it's got to be something that you preferably want to do, so that way you can do your best work. But the other half of that would be, I'm talking about market value. And I'll actually add that in there so it's a little easier to follow on. So by market value, I mean like an area where there's interest circulating into that niche. And just, I'll give an example, so I'm just not rambling about something that's harder to kind of have an idea about. So for me, um, now a little backstory. For those who don't know, I used to be a designer that I used to work under my own company that I had, and I used to work under a name called Grand Under Media. I worked as myself. I didn't work under an alias. Oh, I also have my hotkeys going off here. So let me see there. Guys, you're gonna have to ignore the hotkeys and stuff because I haven't changed the hotkeys for my VTuber model. So without going off too far, I used to work under Ground Under Media. It was my business, my company, my freelance, essentially my freelance business that I started. Um, I initially wanted to start working on content for mostly musicians and metal bands and stuff like that. So I found my niche at first. And I did do that for a few years, not quite as serious as I've been working these days, but that was my niche at the time and the market that I chose. Um, I found over time the market that I started to squeeze into was more so for streamers and content creators. Um, by this time, I did feel practiced enough that I wasn't specifically doing one thing. I kind of wanted to take a chunk of a little bit of everything, and I wanted to work on a little bit of everything. And I didn't want to just really focus on one subset. I wanted to make my skills broadened enough that I had value that I could bring to really anybody that I kind of came across in those markets. Um, Now I still think it's important to have a specific target audience, but I do feel that as you grow as an artist, you obviously develop enough skills and enough value that um, the essentially the opportunities that come your way and the work that can come your way, they're not things you have to turn away or anything like that. You'll be more so prepped and well prepared so you can tackle those projects. But either way, like I said, importance of having a target market is that you again have work that you're invested in and that you kind of secure yourself a little bit better as well because you have this foot in the door essentially. Now, the market that I chose after I rebranded from Ground Under Media was the VTubers and kind of the more so the anime scene. And I did this because I felt the market I identified a little bit better with as a person. And that I felt the work was more fun and there seemed to be more opportunity. So at the time, it was about November, October, I decided that I was going to do this. I personally had just stumbled across VTubing and VTubers and like, people becoming anime characters. Um, and it was definitely at the point where the saturation was really starting to come in strong because it was, I think around that time it probably hit its peak. So if you were to look up like what's VTubing or like what's a VTuber, like if I'm assuming if you're watching this, you probably already know because I'm using a model. But if you were somebody who doesn't know exactly what the stuff is and you want to look that up, um, you wouldn't have a hard time finding results. It's a very saturated market now. There's so many people doing this. And so now, if you were to look to become a VTuber, or if you look to maybe get into the design space for these people, it may be a little bit harder at times, depending on how experienced you are, depending on maybe how quality your work is. But there has been an explosion in terms of population for the amount of VTubers that are doing content creation, and a lot of them are casuals or hobbyists, and it's harder than ever to break out and become a top percent content creator. So, um, not to say that's impossible or anything like that, but that's what I picked. I think I picked at a great time. I think I picked right at the peak. Which if you were to look at a graph, I came a little bit late, but I still came in at a good enough time to kind of get my foot in the door. Um, do I wish I came in a little bit earlier? Of course, because then I would have been able to grow with the scene, which would have been better for me. But now I'm not starting late. So what I would say is in terms of the market value. The market value is that at the time that I came in, it was in very high demand, and there was an explosion at the time that was ongoing for the VTubing market that I picked. So essentially, I'll write in a couple of points regarding what everything I've said, because there's a couple of things that kind of fit this category. So the very first part would be start early or relatively soon after the hype rolls around. I don't know the exact marketing term here regarding, oh, sorry, in relation to your niche slash market. I'm going to make a sub note. Starting too late puts you at risk of entering an oversaturated market, aka making it harder to get your startup, so that way you can do the content and make the stuff that you want to do and work with the people you want to work with, etc. But I do think that it's important to know where you want to work. Make sure it's something you like. Make sure it's something that you have knowledge of, and start working there. Again, have a place that you can dive into, and move on from there. The third point, this is probably the most important point of them all, and I realize that I have more stuff happening on my face, but I just turn it off. The very first thing that I would personally think about, and obviously I would know your product, know your market, but I would almost pair this alongside, of course, when you're thinking about these things, think about what value do I provide to my potential clients? This is really important. So you want to have a value first kind of focus and perspective relating to the work and the content you want to make, the programs and the skills you learn, because essentially when people hire you, when people are looking to hire you as a designer, as an artist, or obviously in any field or in any form of life, what they look at is they look at, like, what are you going to do for me? That's the biggest thing, is people don't want to, people want benefits, right? Everyone wants to come ahead, and business is nothing short of that. When it comes to design and when it comes to having your portfolio, it's how do I bring value? So one of the things that I want to mention is, in order to create a sense of urgency, focus on creating a strong portfolio. And so in terms of creating a strong portfolio, obviously, people are going to be like, well, how do I get a portfolio? I'm still looking for work. It's not really a good excuse. You just kind of have to use your brain a little bit and think a little bit harder. And if that means that you have to make fan work, so if you're an artist, you make fan art of anime or characters or whatever your subset of art is, and you just practice. You just do stuff, and you can use your strongest pieces, put it out in your portfolio. If you're a graphic designer, you can work on things for your friends, or if you have a friend, if one of your friends has a band, you can give them, try and make them a social media kit. If you are a streamer and you're a graphic designer or something like that, or a video editor, you can practice on your own content. You can always do, if there's a content creator you like, you can make them something and, drop it on Twitter, and give them a link. There's plenty of artists out there that have got a good start because they made free work for a popular content creator they looked up to. The creator saw it, took notice, and that was their foot in the door, or vice versa. At the very least, you get a ton of experience and a ton of practice, and you have things that you can put in a portfolio, and you can put all your best work that you can make and put it in there. You don't have any paid work, that's fine. You can put in all the work that you've done for yourself or for others, for free, and you put it in your portfolio, and you can start from there. So have a sense, create a sense of urgency, and create a strong portfolio, so that way when your first customers, your first potential customers go and look into hiring you, they look and they see, this is the value that I could potentially have. This is the quality of work that I'm going to get. Okay, and that's the very first thing, is create a sense of urgency, focus on creating a strong portfolio, and show the potential value or quality you offer. And that's really big. That's a huge thing. So the next piece about that is, what value can I provide my potential clients? What I would kind of start from there is, well, you know what, actually, what I would say in order is, so let's say we rope some of these people in. Let's say the portfolio was enough, right? Let's say you land one person, even one person. So one person hires you from the portfolio. I like to go a little bit above and beyond. So for instance, I could say yesterday it was a really quick, easy commission. I did a Twitch trailer edit for somebody. I animated their logo, and they really liked it. They wanted me to actually send them the animated logo. Now I could have charged them for that easily. I could have said, "Hey, that would be typically a service in its own if I was to like give you that as an overlay," and I could have charged for that. But I already did the work. I already did the work. It was already being used in the video anyways. Um, so I just said, sure. It took me like a minute extra to render the video and give them the file. Like I literally just went in the composition, extended some keyframes, and just sent it to them. It wasn't really any hard, and it wasn't work that was any harder for me. It was just that took like an extra minute of my time. Now time is money, but when it's such little amount of time, it's not really the biggest deal. But when it when you see that as a customer, you go like, this person is just like overachieving, right? And it creates like a really strong impression. And that's the thing that your customers and your clients they're gonna remember. They remember like two things, right? And obviously the very first one is going to be like, how do you treat me in this interaction, and like how pleasant are you to work with and whatever, or how professional are you? And then obviously the second point would be the work. And those things go, in my opinion, very hand in hand. They're not separate at all. If you do good work, then just work on being an approachable person and professional and likable, and kind of combine the two, and you will create value from that alone. So overachieve and go above and beyond. So I would say, like in brackets, like toss in a freebie. Just commit to being pleasant and professional, and be very customer focused. That's what I would say. Now, there's sometimes everyone's gonna like run into people where I don't know, some people take advantage of that type of thing. They expect more, or they expect certain things, or they want to rip you off or whatever. There's always going to be bad apples. But you attract way more bees with honey than you do vinegar. And the other thing to mention honestly about that as well is that, like, there's always going to be those poor interactions. But the bigger you get, and the more experience you get, and the more work you have, and just as you grow, you figure out more terms and conditions for yourself and for your work. You figure out more rules. You figure out more so how you want to play things and how you want to run your business, to the point where through experience, you will figure out how to honestly lessen those interactions. And then another, maybe if this video is well received, then maybe one day in the future, I could talk a bit more about how to like kind of lessen those types of things. But at least when you're starting, it's very, very important to shine as bright as you can, because obviously when you're just starting out, you have less work. The work could be few and far between, or it just could be you're constantly having to fight and claw and scratch to get those customers in, because it happens, right? If you're starting from nothing, then you have to build that up. So I would honestly say is when you get the opportunity, is you take that opportunity and you run and you just go. So if it takes you taking an extra hour and tossing in something for free, if it takes you having that conversation with the customer for a little bit after the work, you know, you got to do those things in order to secure the bag. And that's just what it comes down to. But the thing is when you're starting out and you have those interactions, this is what happens. These good interactions early on, and this is true, lead to more consistent jobs through, and you guessed it, referrals. Oh my God, I can't spell. And referrals, if you're a freelancer, is probably one of your biggest things. Referrals are so important, because when you go and you overachieve and you go above and beyond and you do really, really good for a customer or for a client, and they're extremely happy with the work that you've provided them, they tell people, they tell other people, right? And when their friends ask and say, yo, who did your thing that's really sick, they say, you know, well, Akamori did it. It was really sick and he was really cool. And, you know, he even tossed in this thing, or he was just really cool to talk to. He's a really good, nice guy. Bam. That guy goes to you now. Potentially, right? There's a really strong chance. There's probably like a 75% chance that he goes to you. The only thing that would make sure that like he or her or whoever would not hire you off of that interaction with that friend would be your work, right? If the work's just not the style or something, but like essentially from the word that they were put in or the word that they got from their friend, that was just all these positive things about you, that sells it enough, because now you have credibility, and credibility is like so important in any business. And referrals, a good a good rating and raving about your jobs, about your work, is like so important. It adds so much credibility to your business. So that way, if the most of the interactions at least are good, then of course you're going to get more work through that. So your referrals can come through word of mouth, through friends and whatever, or they could be posting up on their Twitters or their Instagram, or they could be showing it off for their projects, and people could also see that work and come in through there. So it's really important that you take those early opportunities and really work really, 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 really hard to make sure that that opportunity didn't go to waste. And I would honestly say that's probably the biggest thing about what value you're going to provide your potential customers. Um, I'll give you one last point, because I don't want to make this too long. And that point would be to always be, I'm just going to copy paste this from my other thing. Always be prepared to attempt something you're unfamiliar with. Our uncharted territory is scary. Nobody likes change. Sometimes it's really unnerving, but it's really important. I would literally say don't be afraid to learn on the fly. Sometimes somebody wants something, you don't know how to do it. Before you say no, okay? Because I understand that some people will say, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm not the expert there. I should just refer them to somebody else, or I should just turn this down. simply take a few minutes, because you don't have to reply. Like, it's important to be, timely with your clients, but you don't need to reply in the first 3 seconds of getting a message. That's not true. People understand that maybe you have other work or something. Um, Take a couple of minutes, sit there, and really just run the idea through your head. You know, is what this customer is asking me something that I could pull off? Now, maybe you don't know how to do, X design or X style or whatever, but is it something that if you said that you were committed to, oh my God, there we go. Is this something that you could tell your customers that yeah, I can definitely take that on. Um if this I mean, look, I'll say it like this. Chances are, if they've seen your portfolio, or they're looking to hire you because they work through your friends, or they've gone through their friends that referred them. If they're asking you to do something, if it's not in your portfolio, they could either A, be assuming you know how to do it, or they could B, be simply relying on the credibility that you've established through those relationships that you've built. So take a couple of minutes, sit down and think, if I watch some tutorials, if I take a course, if I really sit down and figure this out, unless it's something that's extremely complex that you'd have to take, several months to figure out or something. I mean, if is this something that you can learn? If it is, I would honestly recommend doing it, because again, um, taking these risks may build your credibility further, could further, okay, sorry, could also provide you with more skills and knowledge, which is clutch, and could put money in the bank. That's obviously a big one. Only do this if you can commit to the time frame / deadline, and if the knowledge you'd have to acquire is within the time frame. You need to be able to do the work. You need to be able to have time to learn how to do what you're supposed to do and do the work and all that stuff. You can't, obviously, if you don't know how to video edit and somebody says, hey man, I want you to animate this and do special effects on here and do this, you know what I mean? Just because you learned how to do like a stinger one time and that's like the only thing you've ever made, you know what I mean? Like if the ask is too big, if the work is too complex, and you have a deadline of a week or two, sitting there and being like, well, I'm just going to learn After Effects inside now, you know, that may, for someone that has nothing to do, maybe you could pull off. I don't know, but for the majority of people, that might not be realistic. Um, so it's important, obviously, to build your skills when you're not working as well, so that way you can take on more projects and you can make more sophisticated work. Um, but like I said, if it's doable, why not do it? It's money in the bank, and it doesn't, as long as you put your effort in, as long as you don't do it halfway, um, the only person that benefits is, well, the people that benefits is not just the customer, but it's you. And that's really important. I know this was the first video I've ever done in this format, or it is the first video on the channel, but I just wanted to quickly put this video out before I started getting into like my tips and tricks and all that other stuff, because this is a video that I've thought about recently doing, and this is a question that I have had a few times, and I've had a few people that have inboxed me kind of over and over and over and on repeat, and I figured that maybe I can reach more people that have more of those questions at once and help them out. So, yeah. that's it for now, guys. I will ask that if you want to see more tutorials, if you want to see more content, if you like this content, that I hope that you would leave some comments in the comment section and let me know some feedback. And if you want to have any more discussion, or if you want to, talk and join with my community, you can join our Discord, which is linked down below. I'm also usually working on my commissions on Twitch. If you want to hang out and watch me work there, or ask me any questions or whatever and just chill, I do stream on Twitch, and I do have another YouTube channel as well. So feel free to like, subscribe, check me out on those other platforms, and I will see you next Friday. Take care, guys. Peace.